Good morning and happy Sunday morning. Here we are with another episode for today. And yeah, it's been a decent week. Hope your week was excellent. It's as I get a little bit older, I always like trying to have a little bit more structure in my life. And this has been a nice little thing here and all that I get this little hour and a half or so just to sit down and talk about video games and express a little bit of just random thoughts also as well too. Definitely going to try to keep it as positive minded as much as possible. And yeah, just to kind of share a little bit and all about what happened in the week prior, what we're looking forward to this week. Can be gaming related and all, but just kind of life sometimes also. So for anyone that's tuning in, I do try to, with this podcast, right now it's starting off as a bit of a retrospective on video games, video game history and all. But eventually, as I get a little bit further along, so like right now I'm breaking down years in gaming, right? I started with 1980, and so this episode will be focusing on 1986. Eventually, at some point, right, I'm going to get to the more modern times, but ultimately, I'm going to want to have this a little bit more retro like and all, but definitely we'll be touching on modern things and all. And so, what I do here is, so again, just a quick refresher. We have a little game that we play for Relay of Gaming, where I just select three random games to talk about, and then sometime during the week, my hope is that I'll be able to quote unquote stream them on my YouTube channel. And when I say stream, it's just basically me pointing a camera at a TV while I talk. I have a decent microphone though, I feel, so hopefully the sound's coming through okay on this, but my streaming capabilities are pretty much non-existent, and also that's just kind of doing it old school here, so that's what I'm doing. But, with a lot of the stuff that's coming out there, though, with AI and everything, I'm actually finding myself leaning a lot towards content, whether if it's on YouTube or anything, where it's a bit more human, right? Where it's just someone talking, and all. And I mean, apparently those things are really taking off. A lot of people seem to be making their YouTube channels and all just talking in the car. And I think it's because, I don't know, I could be wrong on this, but I feel like so many of us are just kind of wanting that human connection again. And I feel that with like the internet, social media and all, it's sort of steered us away from all that. And perhaps COVID even added more to the fire on that. But it just seems that's the feeling that I get, that a lot of people are just kind of yearning for that human connection. And if that's the case, that's great. I think that that's a good thing that we're at least trying to move into that direction there. I say that as someone that is very introverted and all, but I do understand the importance of that human connection. Yeah, so that way we just, in the hopes that, we can learn to just understand each other better, learn from each other, not be so resentful towards one another. But that's my hope, anyways, and all. Maybe that's just a little too optimistic, but I try to live like that nowadays as much as possible there. But this past week, nothing too exciting. Just, had work mainly. But this coming week, though, will be kind of nice as I have a bit of a short work week. I do work tomorrow on Monday, but then Tuesday I'll be out of town for a training. And so that'll be pretty much my work day. So that'll be a pretty laid back day there. Then I have Wednesday off. And then Thursday, Friday we'll go to work. But then and then on Saturday, which I normally work, I have that day off. So this week, let's see, it'll be so my wife and I's anniversary on the 23rd, but because I'll be out of town that day and because of our work schedules and all, we won't be actually able to celebrate it until the 27th. But the nice thing though is that looks like we'll have a weekend to ourselves, which we don't really have, so that'll be nice. And so yeah, so excited about that. That'll be nice to spend some time together. And for anniversaries, well, we're kind of homebodies, a little bit more laid back people, and also we don't always, go do anything, out really grand and all. But at some point maybe I'll try to take her out to like a really nice dinner or something like that. But anniversaries don't necessarily have to be about something, spectacular, right? And a lot of it just depends on who and your partner are. I mean, is that really what you want to do and all? Because not everybody's about that. And if you are, then you're probably already making plans, right, for your anniversary for something nice and fancy, which is great. And but like for example, my wife and I, well, we got our kids here, and so we'll probably just spend time here at the house. And uh, we have these. I kind of had a plan to cook up some kind of a dinner, which I'm still thinking of what. I don't know what yet. But we also have. Has anybody tried like those kind of murder mystery games? Like they're. It's like a kit that you buy, and it has it's like a murder mystery basically, so it's almost like you're handed, like almost like you're a detective, and you're handed all this evidence, and you're trying to piece everything together and all. They're actually really fun, and we've done two of them so far, and they've been pretty fun to play. So we have that planned for um it's sometime on Saturday to play. And I also got some like I guess like tickets to go to this escape room, like a killer escape room. Sounds a lot of fun. So her and I, we're we're kind of into like scary movies, true crime documentaries, and things like that. And also, it's always fun to do that with her. She definitely gets excited with stuff like that. And I mean, I've always had, I've always liked that stuff and all that. So now that she kind of does also, so we just sort of have, bonded over that kind of stuff. And but yeah, it'll be a great time. But yeah, but anniversary definitely. It's been what, 8 years now. Jeez, doesn't seem like a lot, but the times it kind of does seem like it is. And yeah, I mean, for anyone that's been through with someone with through marriage and all that and kids and all, it's definitely a journey you take, right? And it's definitely still, I strongly feel that it is definitely one of the most powerful bonds that you can go through, right, with people, as you're not only with your partner, but then eventually when you have kids along and all, because it is something that is truly powerful, truly uniting, right? Where you have a sense of like a community and all, and it's something that is, I still feel highly that marriage is something that can definitely be a powerful tool. Um, but, understandably nowadays, just the way things are, it's not always as easy as an option as it was before. And it does kind of break my heart a little bit when I hear that, because I think about like when I was younger and all, a lot of the struggles that I had, and eventually was able to find someone and all that got me on the right path to just kind of look at life in a lot more optimistically, just sort of be able to have a sense of purpose and everything. And it does kind of make me a bit concerned, right, for the future generation and all, where things have just gotten very skewed and all, and that unfortunately it's just not something that has easily accepted, right, and all, as it was before, with just a simple concept of marriage and having a family. But it is different times and all that, and I can only imagine the different struggles. So if you're listening to this for whatever reason, and if you're a single guy or a single girl and all, and you're out there just kind of doing your thing, feeling very pessimistic about what's going on, just know that, hey, I'm praying for you, and hopefully things work out in one way, shape, or form or the other, right? Whatever that might look like for you. And because I think all of us, in some sense, right, we all deserve to be happy in whatever form that takes in, right? I went through many years where I was by myself a lot, that, and so I know that sense of like just kind of floating around and all, where you feel like there's no purpose in anything, and it's brutal. It can be very brutal. And so I see you, I hear you, and I pray for you, and hopefully things will, like I said, work out one way or the other for you. But that went on a little bit longer than I thought. But, like I said, that's kind of this morning, right? Just sort of talk about things and all, and reflect on the week and everything. And yeah, so the other thing, too, so I think I mentioned before, we'll start getting into the gaming news stuff here. Have a little bit of talk about modern gaming news. Have a reveal that was made that I'm actually kind of excited for, but really skeptical about. Oh my God. So another thing, if you're new to this, I tend to sort of stutter through my words and all. So please bear with me. But, and there was also something else too that I found out that, oh, it kind of, I don't know, it made me a bit not up, not upset at myself. I don't want to say that, but just one of those things, and all that, like if you have an idea and you're like, oh, that'll never go anywhere. But then sometime later you see kind of your idea realized in some actual sense. Yeah, I'll get to that here in a bit. It's kind of silly and all, but it's just something that I came across this past week that sometimes you got to pursue your dreams. But like I said, I'll touch that here in a bit. But for right now, let's get into Relay of Gaming here. So, really quick, just to touch base on the previous games that I had played last week. So we had, let me refresh my memory here. Let's see. So we had the Revenge of Shinobi, Mario Kart 64, and Def Jam Fight for New York. So yeah, I mean, I talked about them as I was playing them, last week and all on my YouTube channel. And so the Revenge of Shinobi, just an amazing game. I can't say enough good things about that game. One of my all-time favorites, and we'll definitely play that game from time to time till probably the day I die. I just love that game. Mario Kart 64 was fun. I would love to play that game more multiplayer. Maybe one of these days I can convince my daughters and all, or maybe even my wife to play it, just to kind of try to relive what would have been like being a Nintendo 64 kid right back in the day and playing multiplayer, because I do think that would have been a lot of fun. And Def Jam Fight for New York. So I like the game. I love the concept to it and all, and especially like this one where it's kind of taking it to the streets, so to speak. But I guess I just really need to learn the mechanics on it, because for me personally, like I feel like the difficulty just kind of spikes up really high and all, and so and I've never really been good at wrestling games, so. But I just love the concept of it, of all these, rappers just kind of beating the crap out of each other and all, and it's got a cool little story to it. So maybe I'll try to continue giving this game a shot, because again, I just love the concept. I know I really love the first one, Def Jam Vendetta, but this one I feel like I need to give it a little bit more of a shot. So excellent games all around. If you've never played it before, definitely give them a shot. The Revenge of Shinobi and Mario Kart 64, those are fairly easily accessible nowadays on a lot of different things, but the Def Jam Fight for New York, that one you'd probably have to emulate. I can't think of another way to play that one otherwise. But if it helps any, it was available on all the three sixth generation systems, the PlayStation 2, the GameCube, and the Xbox back in the day. So whatever works for you, right, as far as getting access to that game. All right, sorry about that. Every now and then there might be like random little pauses. Again, I got my kids here, and also sometimes they need something. But my daughter comes in here into my little office, and she says, "I want to make a surprise for my sissy." They're about 2.5 years apart, so my younger daughter. And so I just gave her a card, and it's just some random, like, I don't know, Christmas card I think we had here that was blank. And she was like, "I want to write on there, I love you." So she's starting to express some affection towards her older sister, which is nice, because a lot of times they're at each other's throats. Yeah, but anyways, let's get back here to Relay of Gaming. Let's see here. Let me get this all set up here. Okay, here we go. All right, let's see what I have here for the first one. So 739. Now, I guess just to kind of little rules that I'm setting myself for this, if I happen to pick a game that was uh, of the same, that I picked before, I'll just either try to pick the one that I have right above it or right below it. But 739. Oh, very nice, very nice. So 739, I have Panzer Dragoon Saga. Oh, excellent. Okay, that actually makes me happy that one was the one that was picked. All right, let's go for another one. 786. So we're staying in the 700s. Let's see. Ratchet and Clank, the PS2 one. Okay, cool. Those are some two great games. Okay. And for the final one. Sticking in the 700s. 773. Oh, dang it. Gosh, do I have a way of playing this? I don't. Okay, so I'm gonna have to go with. Well, let me just redo it then on this one. So basically, the one that it picked on here was Project Gotham Racing 4. It's a racing game on the Xbox 360. One of my favorite racing games. Well, really the series, but I just because I haven't been set up yet to try to emulate for the Xbox 360. I could probably do it on my ROG Ally, but I need to kind of really take some time and all to get the see how that all works. So let me just pick another one then. But dang it, that's a really good game though. 569. All right, let me see what 569 brings. Oh, okay. Musha, the shooter for the Sega Genesis. Okay. All right, so interesting choices for sure. All right, so let's talk about these here for a bit then. So, Panzer Dragoon Saga, one of my favorite games of all time. So for anybody that has some knowledge of video games and all. So the Sega Saturn wasn't a popular system, all things considered. It's definitely gotten a cult following now, which makes me really happy. But back in the day, it wasn't too popular. But you might have heard about this game as being kind of a holy grail of the Sega Saturn. So what I understand of it, well, actually, let me back up what the game is. So there was Panzer Dragoon that came out on the at the launch of the Sega Saturn, at least here in the United States. I don't think it was a launch title for the Japanese one, but it was a launch title here for the United States, and was just a very magical on rails shooter. I mean, the game is just it's. I mean, the graphics certainly haven't aged the best and all, but back then, I mean, the game looked amazing. I mean, the water effects when you're flying over the ocean on the first level was something else, to look at first. And even if the game was running like roughly at about 20 frames per second, but it was still something. It was a really surreal kind of game, and the music was just so, like, awe-inspiring. To this day, the Panzer Dragoon soundtrack on the first one of the greatest soundtracks to me of all time, maybe even my top 5. It's just so, majestic almost, I don't know how else to put it. But, yeah, great so great it's an on-rail shooter, so there's not a whole lot of depth to it and all that, but the story, the lore, it's a very vague story that it has to it, right? For being a non-rail shooter, which was kind of pretty ambitious at the time, but I definitely got the sense like Sega was trying to create this expansive universe, right, with the Panzer Dragoon series because they had like its own language, its own, like warring factions and all that. And so there was definitely more, right, that you felt that they were trying to do with this series. And so the developers were it's a company called Team Andromeda. I'd have to look up to see kind of what happened to them afterwards if they just kind of got all molded into different divisions of Sega and all. I'm not 100% sure, but yeah, so that was the first one, which came out in 1995. And then in 1996, I believe, is when the sequel came out, the Panzer Dragoon 2 Zwei, which, to my understanding, Zwei means two in German. So it's almost like calling it Panzer Dragoon 2 2 is from what I've read somewhere. I don't know that for sure. I think I've seen that a handful of times somewhere else. But same kind of concept, right? It's an on-rail shooter, and so not too long, but now you get branching paths and all that. And yeah, excellent. For me, mostly I like it more than part one. This one here is because it has like the different branching paths that you can take on some levels that your dragon can evolve and all that. And just overall, I feel it is a bit of a better game. The graphics are a lot smoother too, also at least for the Sega Saturn, and also definitely one of the best games on the Sega Saturn. And the music is excellent too in it as well. Just but they changed composers and all. Where the composer for the first one, oh, I forgot his name, and I want to say I think he passed also, but he did some kind of like composing for like Japanese TV or movies. So his soundtrack is very much on par with like a lot of like stuff that you would hear on TV and whatnot. I mean, it's so good. But then also he composed it in a way where the game was already built, and because it's an on rail shooter, he could compose the music to go alongside with the action. Where the soundtrack on part two was, excuse me, it wasn't Red Book Audio. It was just made I think through the Saturn's internal audio system, but still very good though. And I mean, it's still an excellent soundtrack. Definitely some of the best you'll hear on the Saturn still, right? But yeah, just an excellent game. But they were both of them were on rail shooters. So that game again came out in 1996 or so, right? And so if you were a Saturn fan, definitely some of the best games on there. But again, the Saturn was flailing, and it just it didn't, by the time it was 1998, it came out with some games, and then after that, it just kind of floundered out, right? So what happened was Sega, again, and again, this is just my vague understanding of it, and also, excuse me if I get some of the facts wrong, but Sega threw a lot of money into this project of Panzer Dragoon. And so they wanted something that was going to be on par with something like Final Fantasy VII. Very ambitious, right? But like I said, right, when you play part 1 and 2, they're just on rail shooters. But they really, the story behind them and everything, it gives you the sense of a much greater world. And so obviously they had something planned for this, right? And all that they really took the time to develop like a new language for the game and all that. And so there's definitely a lot of creativity behind it. And that's where this game, Panzer Dragoon Saga, comes in. Because what this game is, it's like a shooter RPG, basically. I guess is the best way I can describe it. But definitely has a lot of RPG elements to it, where it's not just like a straight up shooter. And there's a lot of cutscenes in this game, a lot of cinemas, a lot of like world building and everything. And so it's sort of like Sega and Team Andromeda's version of what they wanted to present to you, right? With the original first two games. And maybe they had it planned all along. I'm not sure. I mean, the games came out from like 1995 to 1998, so within those 3 years, right? Yeah, I would think that they were probably, they had these three games in mind, anyways. I would assume, because there's a lot of story to Panzer Dragoon Saga. So if you like the setting, the atmosphere, world building, and everything of the first two games, then you'll really want to play this one, right? Because it really expands on all of that, and it came on 4 CDs at the time. Now, it is an RPG, but even though it comes on 4 CDs, it's actually a fairly short RPG. I want to say, I don't know, it takes you like about, I think back in the day I could beat it like in 15, 20 hours, something along those lines. So again, it wasn't like a 30 to 40 hour RPG, but more towards like the 15 to 20, give or take, I believe. But a lot of the discs are filled up because a lot of the cinemas in this game, because it has quite a bit of it. But there's definitely a lot of gameplay here, and it's really fun to play. The way they sort of combine turn-based with on-rail shooting is really creative and really fun. And there's different sections of the world map that it gives you, right? So you have like an overworld, so to speak, that you sort of point and click on where you want to go on the world map, and then it takes you to an area. And then in that area, you can fly your dragon around, sometimes in this kind of like a little bit of an open world almost. And you're just, exploring, that section of the world. And so there's some exploration there. You can customize your dragon a bit, as you have 4 different versions of a dragon that you can evolve to. So like you can make it more defensive, more agility, more power, and more, I believe, like spiritual, like where you can use like more of your what's considered like your magic power, so to speak. And so it's pretty cool on how you can customize your dragon that way. And yeah, it's a lot of fun. It's for the Sega Saturn. I mean, the game can look a little rough nowadays, but for the Sega Saturn, it was pretty impressive. It has some open world elements to it in some sense, right? And certain, the way you can sort of traverse around certain areas, and then the towns too also that you visit in this are fairly expansive, and they have like a lot of different like winding paths and all that for you to get lost in and explore. The what I understand of the voice acting and all is that in the first two they created a specific language for the series. In this game, there's sections of it where they're speaking in that unique language, but then the majority of the dialogue is in Japanese, is my understanding. And then there's the subtitles are in English, though. So just FYI, right? And all, if you're wanting to get into this game. But the music is well done. It's from I'm pretty sure it's from the same composer of Part 2, which again is not quite to the level of what Part 1 was, but still very excellent. Very great RPG and all. I mean, it's definitely one of my favorite RPGs of the 5th generation. and has a lot of production value and all. For I guess you can say it's like it was the Sega Saturn's Final Fantasy VII in a way, in the terms of like scope, ambition, production values, and all that, right? Now, obviously, the Sega Saturn wasn't as powerful as the PlayStation as far as the 3D goes. Well, maybe not as powerful isn't the right word. It's just it wasn't. It was more harder to develop for. I guess that's a better way of putting it. So basically, meaning that the 3D imagery, right, and all, is not going to be something like you see on the PlayStation, but for the Saturn, it's still pretty impressive. And the reason why this game is considered sort of the holy grail for the Sega Saturn is because there was only so many copies made. I think I've seen like numbers around like 750,000 or something like that. I don't know. There wasn't a whole lot that copies that were made because it came out towards the end of the Sega Saturn's lifespan. Because in 1998, so again, the Sega Saturn was already on its way out here in the United States. Because I think in Japan it lasted a little bit longer. It was just more successful in Japan, and there was three really excellent games though that came out in that last stretch in 1998, and they all came out roughly around, if I remember right, around the spring summer of 1998. But we had Magic Knight Ray Earth, which was originally a very early Saturn game in the Japanese lineup of games, but then we didn't get it here in the West until mid 1998, I believe, give or take. Um, it was brought over by Working Designs, and then there was Shining Force 3, sorry, and that's a very excellent strategy RPG that I wish would get more love. And then Panzer Dragoon Saga. So those were three excellent games that came out right on the Saturn. Unfortunately, right at the end of its lifetime here in the United States, anyways. And all three of them became pretty high priced, and as far as like the value of them. And so just to kind of put into perspective, so it would have been in 2019 or 2020. I had those three games right there, right? Because from originally when I bought them back in 1998, and I still had them. But at that time, had some financial struggles, and I was also just trying to get rid of a bunch of physical collection of games that I had. My wife and I had just moved into a home, and it's a nice home. It's a modest home and all, and I'm happy with the home and all that. But it's not the biggest of homes and all, and we're gearing up to we had just had a kid, and so the house was just started filling up with stuff, and so I had a fairly big collection of video games and all, but I just had to make a decision, right? And I just needed to get rid of them, as we just didn't have a whole lot of space, and also a combination of just at the time we're having a bit of financial struggles. So I knew that these Saturn games had some value to them, and so I ended up selling them, and kind of broke my heart when I did. I mean, but basically, and these were prices around 2019-ish or so, right? Because I remember it was right before the pandemic hit when the prices really rose up, to my understanding. And I wasn't too experienced with this on selling games, and all that, but I went through pricecharting.com, and the so let's see. So Magic Knight Ray Earth, I don't quite recall exactly the amount, but I want to say I sold it for like $500, which sounds like a lot of money, right? Um, but like I said, I needed some money at the time. And Shining Force 3, oh, that one broke my heart because like I said, I was new to this. I didn't really know what I was doing. It wasn't going for quite as much, but I think it was going for like 100 and something or so. I did something, I forgot what it was, but somehow it ended up posting for that I was selling it for like about $60. And immediately before I could try to adjust it and all that, somebody bought it. And I was like, dang it, and I didn't want to go back on it or anything or try to dispute it. And also I was like, nope, I mean, that was all fair and square. But yeah, whoever that person was, I got that Shining Force 3 from me. Hope you're enjoying it. But Panzer Dragoon Saga, though, that one there, I did sell it for it was about 1,100 or so. And now, like I said, this was before the pandemic, right? And also, I can't even imagine what the prices are nowadays on these games. But I'm sure Panzer Dragoon is going for quite higher. But for the Panzer Dragoon one, that one was kind of my baby, though, right? Where I knew I was going to get a bit of money for that one, and it was about 1,100. And that one there was it was one of the first games that I sold, and I sold it, got shipped out to someone, but then UPS messed up And so then I had to go through UPS and all that to try to figure out what was going on and all that. And the guy that I had sold it to, he was messaging me, so I was messaging back and forth with him and all. And I let him know like, hey, dude, sorry, man, something. UPS kind of messed something up. It's getting get sent right back out to you and all that. But ultimately, he messaged me that he got it in good condition and all that. Because I kept them all three of them in really great condition, and so he was pretty excited about it when he finally got it. So glad I was able to make that work out for him. But yeah, I mean, when I was selling those games, I was like, oh god, I feel like I'm letting them go, like as like a piece of me also. But just it is what it is, right? Now you got to do what you got to do sometimes. But just to kind of give you an idea, right, and all of how rare that going specifically for Panzer Dragoon Saga, how rare that game was, and how much of a demand it was for because Sega just didn't make a whole lot of them. And it's unfortunate just because, again, it was a really excellent game. And I mean, I can imagine what that game cost for Sega because I'm pretty sure it was pretty expensive. And I'm pretty sure it was just one of those things that just added to the eventual financial downfall that Sega went through during this stretch here that led to their demise, right? As far as like being in the console race in 2001 when they announced it, that they were bowing out of that. But Panzer Dragoon Saga, there's not a way to buy it anywhere now. It's one of those games that it's just an amazing game. It's really excellent. It's in my top 100 games of all time. I mean, if you have any interest in like RPGs, cool worlds, very unique worlds, because the artistry on these games and all, it's just something. It's truly something else. I think I've heard that it's a bit like the art style and everything was inspired by like some artist. I think a French artist named Morbius, something to that effect. Someone can correct me maybe if I'm wrong on that, but I'm pretty sure I've seen that a handful of times on this series. But so you have to emulate it now, right? But it's definitely worth it. I feel if you really want to see what this game is about, it's just again you're kind of coming into some kind of crude graphics and all, but still though it's an excellent game. But yeah, but there is some hope though. There is some hope, and it's going to be something that I'm going to touch base on when I'm talking about like modern gaming news. But yeah, Panzer Dragoon Saga, excellent game, love it. Okay, but then the next game here is for Ratchet and Clank, and so this is specifically the PlayStation 2 version. So the very first one that came out in 2002, I believe. And so yeah, I mean the start of a great series. I got this game. It was so at this time I was starting to read Game Informer magazine because my beloved game fan had a bunch of drama behind the scene, and also they sort of disbanded around. I'm pretty sure around this time they weren't together anymore. So I had to find a new magazine, and it ended up being Game Informer. And Game Informer was great also. And so they had this on the cover of one of their magazines in early 2000, I don't know, 2002 or so. And so it looked interesting, and they were really hyping up the game, and so ended up buying it. And yeah, I mean, Ratchet and Clank games are just very fun. It's all the different weapons you can get in it, a lot of fun, and just Ratchet and Clank. They're just a lot of fun in these games. I want to say this is kind of my more favorite version of Clank in this one because they changed up his personality and the actor afterwards. This one here is Ratchet is a bit more snarky, a bit more pessimistic and all, and a bit more of a smartass. But I love the banter between Ratchet and Clank in this one a lot more. Eventually they changed the actor to James Arnold Taylor, who's excellent. I think he really does, excuse me, a great job as Ratchet. But I don't know. For me personally, I kind of felt that the first original actor fit the character better. And this is the second time I've kind of critiqued James Arnold Taylor in my times of doing a podcast because I've had some thoughts on his performance with Tidus as well too in Final Fantasy X. But the thing is that he's become so iconic in those roles, and not to downplay the actor, I think he's really great and all. It's just that for these particular scenarios, which I know it's kind of what made him famous, at least in video games, just had a bit of an issue with it. But he's an excellent actor and all, and he was actually, if I remember right, I could be wrong on this, but if I recall, so there was a Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles animated show or animated like computer graphics movie that came out in the early 2000s, I believe. And so I could be wrong on this, but James Arnold Taylor voiced Leonardo in that one, which he's excellent in that one. That's actually a really cool movie, like a computer animated turtle movie. So he voiced Leonardo in that one. He does excellent. And the voice actor, which I forget his name, that did Ratchet in the first one, I think he voices Michelangelo in that movie. So it's kind of here to hear their two voices, right? I'm pretty sure. I know James Arnold Taylor does Leonardo. I'm pretty sure that the actor for Part One in Ratchet and Clank does Michelangelo. So if I could be wrong on that, but I'm pretty sure. But yeah, but Ratchet and Clank, it's a blast, and I mean the series only got better from here. But that first one though definitely laid the groundwork right enough for some really fun action platforming. Became a staple for the PlayStation, library of games, and I mean, even with the last one that came out, the Ratchet and Clank Rift Apart, they're just fun games. Just the way you can use your weapons on them and all, and the really creative different planets you traverse and all, and they're funny games. Even though I think the humor lost a bit of its edge after the original trilogy on the PlayStation, but they're still fun. They're excellent games, and definitely some of the best that the PlayStation has to offer. So I'll be excited to play through that. And then the third one is one that I don't have a whole lot of experience with, even though it's a really popular Sega Genesis shooter, and that's a Musha, which I don't quite know what that stands for, but it came out fairly early in the Sega Genesis lifetime, and I know that it was a pretty popular shooter, and it's got an interesting premise where it's like you're a robot, but you're like in ancient Japan, like ancient feudal Japan, and I played a bit of it. It's hard. So if I do end up playing it on this, I'm probably not going to get very far just because a little bit that I played of it before I kind of suck at it. But it's definitely still a fun game though, and I'll be excited to try to get into this game a little bit more. It's kind of on the Aleste series of shooters, which I believe the Turbo Graphics might have some. I think there was like Power Strike, I think it's called on the Master System also. And so the developer I believe is Compile, which they do a lot of different shooters. And again, I think from they had a lot of their games on the throughout like the fourth generation system of game consoles. But this one here was one of the more popular ones. But the one that I really got into though was RoboLess, which was I don't know if I'm pronouncing that last part right, Aleste, but RoboLess I did really enjoy, which seems to play very similar to Musha. But RoboLess came out on the Sega CD, and maybe one day I'll talk about that game. But I really enjoyed that one, so that's why I feel like I can really get into Musha if I give it a really good, honest chance. And yeah, so a bit kind of exciting to play through that one there. But yeah, so that's what I got for Role of Gaming. So very excellent games there. And so yeah, kind of excited. Hopefully I'll be able to get a chance to play through those here sometime this week. Alrighty, but for like modern gaming stuff, let's see, what do I got here? Oh, okay, so yeah, touching base a bit on what I mentioned earlier about Panzer Dragoon. So so I've already mentioned, right, and all that I really enjoyed the Panzer Dragoon games, and so the first one was remade for all the modern gaming consoles, and that was in what 2019, I believe, when it came out. And the original launch was a bit rough, and it was only on the Switch. But then eventually they fixed a lot of things on it because it was weird. Like the dragon would kind of bounce a little bit, and the shooting felt a little off and all. But they ended up patching it, and it actually feels really great now. I mean, it pretty much feels just like the original, and the graphics are pretty stunning on it as well too. And for the most part, I feel that they kept the look and the feel, because that's an important thing. It's kind of hard to, I'm sure that it's hard to capture that as the feel of the original, because some remasters don't quite get that right, and it loses a lot. But this one I feel does a decent job of it, that it still retained the feel of Panzer Dragoon. They kept the same soundtrack, which is amazing and all. And so I actually think that Panzer Dragoon, the remake that they did for the first one, is a really excellent remake, or not, well, remaster, I guess I should say, right? Because I mean, the graphics are obviously much better, right? Because we're going from the fifth gen graphics to eighth gen graphics. But other than that, it's the same game. The enemy patterns are pretty much the same as far as I can tell. The music is the same, and the controls, I mean, they're a little updated, but for the most part, the same. Um, and so I would say it's a remaster, but I feel like it's a great way to play that game if you can't quite stomach the visuals of the original one, and it's just a more easily accessible version. easier acceptable. Ooh, I'm stumbling through my words. But so, anyways, it was done by a company called Forever Entertainment, I believe, and so they haven't had the best reputation though. But this one, I think that they did okay. Well, they had announced that they were going to do a Panzer Dragoon 2 Zwei, right? The one that I really like, and so I was excited about that. And it was supposed to have come out, I think, like in 2001 or so, because the one of the directors or whatever, he came out saying like, yeah, it's going to come out at the end of 2001 or 2002 or 2021 or 2022. But then after that, there wasn't a peep about it. But then they came out with a House of the Dead remake and then a House of the Dead 2 remake, which the House of the Dead remake wasn't bad. I do like that one outside of the fact that you can't really play with a light gun. But the House of the Dead 2, it seems like it's pretty horrendous. That makes me a bit upset just because I love the House of the Dead 2 and all. But it looks like, yeah, it's not that great, so I'm not even gonna bother with that version. So, but again, I was just kinda thought, I was like, "Well, I guess Panzer Dragoon 2, they just probably scrapped it," right? Well, recently, they came out with some screenshots of it, and that it's also gonna be playable. There's gonna be a playable demo of it at the Tokyo Game Show, which I believe is sometime this week. So that'll be exciting, I guess, to see that, 'cause I wanna see what that game is. But there is some skepticism though with it, right? That the first of all is from this Forever Entertainment company, which again they've been kind of a hit and miss. They did I feel like they did a good job with the first one. So if it's anything like the first remake that they did of the first Panzer Dragoon game, then I'm excited for it. But the screenshots that they've shown, I mean it sometimes you have to see it in motion, right? But let's just say that some of them look okay, some of them don't look too bad. But there's one in particular that doesn't look that great, and so we'll see, right? We'll just have to see. I'm gonna lean more towards that it's gonna be a decent conversion of the game. I just hope that I mean, really, I hope with this game they just clean up the graphics and all that, make it look nice and all, but keep the music, keep pretty much everything about it. And if you can do that, and if it's again comparable to what they did with the first remake, then I'm on board. So I'm gonna be optimistic about this one. Yes, let's go with that. But yeah, so this week there's a lot of cool stuff actually, because there's like what Silent Hill F I think comes out this week, which I mean, there was like a review that leaked, the supposed review that gave it like a 9.5. So there seems to be some good buzz going around this game, right? That this game could be good. It's very different from the previous Silent Hill games that because this one seems to be more like Japanese horror, so like along the lines of things like The Grudge and things like that, which it looks creepy, so different from what we know of Silent Hill. But I'm keeping my eye on this one. We'll see. And there's a Tokyo Game Show, I think that is this week, and then there's also I think it's rumored that the PlayStation. I don't know if they've announced it officially, but I think there's going to be a state of play this week. And so hopefully they'll show what this Wolverine game is all about. There's some speculation that there might be some information about Final Fantasy VII Remake Part 3, whatever that ends up being. I don't think that they will. Just because I feel like they want to get the Xbox and the Switch versions out first, which come out in January of next year, before they start making announcements on that. I mean, don't get me wrong. If they announce something about Final Fantasy VII Part 3 this week, holy shit, right? But I don't think so. I think we're still a little too early for that. Hey, if they do, I'm on board, right? And all. But I don't want to get myself too hyped up for that, just because I feel like it's still a little too early. But we'll definitely shit my pants if they announce something this week. Not literally shit my pants, but or I might. Who knows? Let's see. But so some pretty cool stuff coming up this week. But one thing that I noticed, I mentioned earlier about something that I came across this week that was like, and this is just kind of a personal story, right? But there's this game that I've been really looking forward to, and so it got announced. I think was it last week? I don't quite recall, but they announced, or there was some kind of a trailer that they came out of this game recently, and it's for an indie game called Neon Inferno. It seems to be like a combination of like Contra with wild arm or not wild arms, wild guns, where it's like a run and gun shooter, but then also you can shoot towards the background and all, like some of those old arcade, like what was it, Cabal or like Wild Guns and all those kind of games. But it's set in this very cool cyberpunk, futuristic world. And just what I've seen of this game, I don't know, something about it just really caught my attention, right? I was like, I love this aesthetics and all that, right? I'm a sucker for like anime, cyberpunk kind of stuff and all. And, just what I've seen a little bit of the main characters and all, looks like the main character looks like almost like Jin Kazama in a way, right? So I've always had my eye on this game. I was just like, this looks cool. This looks pretty interesting. Well, a demo came out somewhat recently, and so I finally got around to downloading it on my Steam Deck and wanted to check it out. And so as I started playing through the game, the main character, so he has like a trench coat, hair kind of slicked back and all. He has like this big old cross pendant, and his name is I think it said Angelo Morano. Uh and so when I'm looking at this, and then given that it's in a very cyberpunk setting and all that, so a little bit of a backstory on me. Um so some years ago, this would have been, oh, I don't know, like in the mid 2000s or so, I was dabbling around in writing screenplays. But during that time, I wrote a variety of different screenplays, and none of them went anywhere and all. But I was just, messing around with trying different things and all. And so, like, I wrote a fantasy kind of one, and then I wrote like a kind of like a sort of like a one that was a young adult struggling through some things, kind of a bit of a love story, and then my version of like a kind of like a comedy road trip buddy movie. But I also wrote the sci-fi story, which is it was called The Last City. And so in this one, it was basically you're living in this sort of so the setting is in the cyberpunk sort of city, and you play this character, or not you play this character. I'm thinking of video game terms. So the main character is this. He's kind of like a bounty hunter of sorts and all, and his name is Angel. Angel Moreno is what I named them. And so, you're going through to try to solve a mystery. Eventually, you meet some other people and all, and end up kind of unwinding this big old conspiracy about what the city's all about and all that. Well, anyways, it was actually a story that I'm kind of proud of. And so at the time, I used to also draw a lot. I'm not the best drawer and all, but I was very into like drawing like anime kind of characters and all. So I would draw out these characters too. So, because it was like, you can say like almost like 6 main characters that I had in this. And so I drew them out. And I had like this world in my mind, right, that I was drawing it out, wrote the story and all that. So me personally, I was proud of it. And so at one point, I sent the screenplay that I had written over to a script consultant. I had bought this book some years ago. It was called like How to Write a Screenplay or something like that. And so the author of the book, she also advertised that she was like a screenplay consultant. So I got the information on that from the book, and I sent it to her. And so she critiqued it, sent it back, and just ripped it apart. Unfortunately, that kind of really just sort of ruined my confidence as far as me trying to do like anything screenplay writing and all that. And I really shouldn't have let it get to me and all. I don't know if I would have ever had any kind of a future with doing that. It's just something that I really enjoyed doing and all. But like I said, after that, I just didn't really pursue it any further. But it was a script that I was personally kind of proud of, just because I felt like I built the kind of a little universe, right, and all with the screenplay that I wrote, as far as like the characters, the city, a lot of like the different laws and politics and things like that go into this world, the characters with their backstories and all that. So I was proud of it for that, right? And all, like I said, I even had I got like this poster board and drew out the characters, right? And it's almost like in a poster sized thing. And I had it up in my room a lot. And I remember sometimes friends would come over, was like, "Oh wow, where did that come from?" I was like, "That's all from my imagination." And so people were like, "Wow, that's really impressive," right? And all that, you had the imagination for that. And so it's something that me personally, I'm kind of proud of. So how does this have to do with anything about this Neon Inferno game? Well, basically, the main character, or one of the main characters on this Neon Inferno game, with his slick back hair, the trench coat, the big old cross, that looks almost identical to Angel Moreno character on The Last City script that I wrote. And the character's name is Angelo Morano. And I was just like, what? And then that it takes place in a cyberpunk kind of setting and everything. I was like, you got to be kidding me, you know? And so for me, it's just kind of like, it just sort of gave me a sense like, had I pursued it any further, right? And now maybe it would have turned into something, right? Maybe not like a movie or animation or whatever, right? And all, but maybe a video game. Who knows, right? And so it's just something that I just looked at that and I was like, I can't believe that I'm almost like looking at something that's reminiscent of something that I had in my mind and imagination. It kind of takes into it, and it finally took a life of its own on it in its own way, right? And so, if anything, it just made me a lot more excited to play the game and just something, and all that just got me thinking. I was like, oh man, what if I would have pursued it, and all that. It's just kind of cool to see like an actual tangible version of something that existed in my head. Obviously, it's a different artist, different everything, so they're gonna have their own interpretation of whatever this character is, and it's not like they took any ideas from me and all, because like I said, mine never went anywhere. It's not like I ever published any of that information that I had. But it just, it was almost a scary coincidence, really. And anyways, I thought I'd share that little story there because it's just it was almost scary in a way, right? Where I'm like, oh my god, this is what I had envisioned, but to some extent, right? But anyways, I'm really excited about that game. The little bit that I played as a demo, it plays excellent, looks great, looks fun. This year has been such a great year for indie games, specifically like 2D indie games, that I am all for it. I fucking love it. It just brings me back to my childhood and all a lot. And so this is definitely going to go down. 2025 is going to go down as one of the greatest years for like old school retro like indie games and all. And that it's such a great year. I'm loving it because we still have. So we had Ninja Gaiden Ragebound, which recently got a patch, and you can play it at 60 frames per second now on the Switch, too, at least. I don't know about the original Switch, which is great. Um, Shinobi Art of Vengeance, which is amazing. And then we're still getting. Oh, then there was Eartheon, and the shooter that's from the Sega, made for like the Sega Genesis, and then there's also the upcoming Terminator 2 No Fate, which looks amazing, and then that Neon Inferno game as well too. And I'm sure there's a bunch of other games that I'm missing there, and all those are just some of the ones that have been on my radar. And then of course Hollow Knight Silksong, right? Which I'm still going through Hollow Knight, but so I haven't gone through this one yet. But Hollow Knight Silksong, basically like the mega hit that it just became, right? Which is kind of like the Grand Theft Auto 6 of indies. God, can you imagine what Grand Theft Auto 6 is going to do next year? Assuming if it comes out next year. Oh man, that game's gonna burn the world down. I mean, if how much like Silk Song, like crashed the internet and everything. So that'll be fun to see how that all plays out next year. Again, assuming it comes out next year. But yeah, this year's been great for like indie titles, and it makes me happy. It's definitely been cool. But a little bit on Hollow Knight. I'm still going through the game. I'm like 17 hours into it now, something like that. I'm still loving it. Hollow Knight is great, but um, but it really one thing that I kept seeing, right, and all, like if you're stuck in an area or if you're stuck in a boss, just go explore somewhere else, and that definitely rang true with something that I just went through in this game because I came across this boss, and gosh, this boss is just he was kind of frustratingly hard because there's a lot of the bosses that I've played through, they're hard, but I'm like, okay, but I got this. This boss is just, I'm like, I don't even know how to try to beat this boss, and I'll just say it's a boss that's in the kind of underwater area where it kind of looks like a big old maggot kind of thing, and I'm like, okay, I'm getting my ass kicked. And then the frustrating part about it too also is that I don't see like the nearest save bench that I've been able to find. It's not too close to it either. I mean, it's not too far, but it is a bit of a trek, right, to get back to the boss, and so it is kind of annoying. Um, what's funny though is that the previous boss that I mentioned about the praying mantises and all that, I had a bit of a run back, right, to get back to the boss. On that one, I kind of have to retract my words because there was a save bench that was a little bit closer to the boss that I just missed out on, right? So that could have made it a bit more bearable, right? Had I found that safe bench, but I found that after I beat the boss. But yeah, but I'm still loving it though, because what I ended up doing is, so I was getting my ass kicked by that boss, and so I went in a different direction, and now I kind of opened up a little bit more of another of the map and all, and so just gonna maybe try to explore a different section. But yeah, I came to the City of Tears area, and oh, that is such a beautiful setting, and the the music and everything that plays out and all, and just the environment there, truly stunning. I mean, I can see why this game was, beloved by a lot of people, and I'm loving it still. But it is kicking my ass along the way, but I'm going through it. I'm getting through it. I just need to try to find something to try to help me beat that boss. And I'm not looking up. I don't want to look up walkthroughs or anything like that. I'm trying to do this one on my own. But I may cave in and look up something on that boss, because I'm like, I have no idea how to beat this boss. And I have some power ups, right? But we'll see. But anyways, yeah, it's great though. I'm having a blast with it and all. But that's what I got, I think, for now for like modern gaming stuff. So let's start getting into 1986. Now, this is where things really start getting interesting here, because this is where, again, I'm more conscious of like the things that happened during this year. And so a lot of the things that I was seeing here, like as far as games that came out and all that, this is where I'm really like I lived through this stuff, right? And so this is going to be kind of exciting, from here on out, right, to really start talking about these things. So let's go through the things here for Wikipedia on the information that it has here. So 1986 saw many sequels and prequels in video games, such as Super Mario Bros. 2, along with titles as Arkanoid, Bubble Bobble, Castlevania, Dragon Quest, Ikari Warriors, The Legend of Zelda, Metroid, Outrun, and RBI Baseball. The year's highest grossing arcade video games were Hang On in Japan, Hang On and Gauntlet in the United States, and Nemesis, which was Gradius apparently, in London. The year's best-selling home system was the Family Computer and Entertainment System for the third year in a row. So that's the Famicom. While the year's best-selling home video games in the Western markets were Super Mario Bros. In the United States and Yi Air Kung Fu in the United Kingdom. Video game developer Masaru Sakurai, so he's the guy behind the Super Smash Bros. Series, considers 1986 the most incredible year for the video game industry. He cited the release of several games that were the beginning of popular and long-lasting franchises such as The Legend of Zelda, Dragon Quest, Castlevania, and Kunio-kun. I'm not sure what the last one is. He attributed the release to the new hardware like the Family Computer Disk System and Megabit ROMs that afforded developers with greater storage, which allowed for more creative possibilities. Sakurai noted that the better games in the competitive market generated more appeal. And yeah, I recently did like my favorite years in gaming, and I had put on there was it 1985? No, I put 1986. I think I did. No, never mind. I think I did put 1986. So never mind. Forget what I just said. But financial performance. So in the United States, the home video game industry recovered with the arrival of the third generation of video game consoles led by the Nintendo Entertainment System. So in Japan, the highest grossing arcade games. So number one was Hang On. Right on, Sega. Number two, Major League. Number three, Ikari Warriors. Number four, Rio Mahjong Hai Hai. Number five, Tekkon World Cup. Number six, Space Harrier. Number seven, Gradius. Number eight, Arkanoid. Number nine, ASO, which stands for looks like Armored Scrum Object. And number 10, 1942. So let's see here. But for the United States and the arcade, so number one was Gauntlet. And then number 2 through 5, it just has on here kind of all bundled together. Hang On, Ikari Warriors, Speed Buggy, and World Series. Let's see, but then for best-selling home systems, so the Famicom and the Nintendo Entertainment System, worldwide it was at 6,900,000. The Commodore 64 was number 2 with 2,500,000. The number 3 was the Family Computer Disk System, which was at 2 million. So that was, yeah, it was sort of like an add-on to the Nintendo, to my understanding. I don't know a whole lot about it, but I believe it was the purpose of it was to give the Nintendo, or well, the Famicom, I should say, more storage. Is well, kind of like what Sakurai was quoted earlier, saying on this, the little bit that I read earlier. My understanding of it, I'm not too familiar with that, but that's kind of my understanding. The Commodore 128, so that was at 1 million. The Apple II at 700,000. The NEC PC88 slash PC98 at 510,000. The Sega SG-1000 at 405,000. The Mac at 380,000. The Amiga at 200,000, and the Atari ST at 200,000. Let's see. So the best-selling home video game systems. Let's see. So let's go here with the United States. Let's see. In the United States, Super Mario Brothers for the Nintendo Entertainment System was the best-selling home video game of 1986. The following titles were the best-selling home video games on bi-weekly, reported by Famicom, Famitsu magazine. But let's see. So number one was Super Mario Brothers, and then wait, how are they showing this? The way they have this graph, that is a little weird. But basically, number one best-selling game, right, was the Super Mario Brothers, and rightfully so, because I mean the Super Mario Brothers and the Famicom came, or the Nintendo Entertainment System came out last year. This is the year where I'm sure it picked up a lot of steam though on it. But for Game of the Year, let's see, it was Super Mario Brothers for arcade, and then Dragon Quest for console, and then computer was Gauntlet. Let's see. So new companies, it was Majesco Entertainment, Ubisoft, uh, but oh my god, I always pronounce this wrong. Bethesda, Bethesda, whatever, Bethesda, the dudes behind Elder Scrolls, Softworks, Famitsu, and From Software. Wow, okay, so Ubisoft, Bethesda, and From Software, really, on this here. That's interesting. Let's see, but defunct, though, was Magic. On June 13, Activision merges with Infocom, and then Activision acquires GameStar Software, and Sinclair Research is acquired by Amstrad. So yeah, a lot of cool stuff, right? As that started coming out this year, and yeah, I mean there was a lot of series that started getting established within this year here. So just to kind of start touching base on some of these here. But yeah, but 1986. So this was the year that Sega really started to make a bit of a splash in the video game industry here. Well, to some extent, anyways, right? So we started getting things in the arcade, like for example, Outrun, which I'll say right now, Outrun, my game of the year for this year, for 1986. I just love this game. It's fun, fast-paced, colorful, just very joyful arcade racing game. And what I love about this game is that it's not so much like a racing game. It's more like a, well, I think Yu Suzuki has come out saying that it's a driving game, which what it is that you're driving against the clock, not so much like other racers, right? I mean, there's cars on the road, obviously, but that it's more that, you're competing against time and you're, trying to get your own best time. And I just love how you're just kind of going, because it's a bit of, it can be a bit of a relaxing game where you're just cruising along, right, and all with your lady and a nice Testarossa, and just going through all these different parts of the countryside where the all the different locations and all that you visit, that you go through is really fun to look at. And with all these different branch ways, because it has up to 5 different endings that you can go through, and to get to each one, right, and all you can take different paths. So it would take a few playthroughs for you to see all the different stages and all, which was part of the fun. The music is so memorable on it. The controls are really great on it, and the arcade version, especially with like the rumble feedback that it would give you, was pretty excellent. And it was starting to kind of like with Hang On, was starting to introduce like these arcade cabinets that were made specifically for the game, where you sit down, has a wheel and all that. And so Sega was killing it in the arcades at really showcasing a lot of impressive technology. Outrun for me was one of the better ones. Just love the game. So the way people have like maybe the Super Mario Brothers theme in their head, like if you grew up as a Nintendo kid, which even I did, admittedly, not even being a Nintendo kid, I still have the do 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 do. Well, for me though, the one that probably sticks out even more in my head is Outrun. Dun 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 dun. Anyways, I probably am not doing it correctly, no, but I have it stuck in my head now, right? What's Splash Wave, Passing Breeze, and Magical Sound Shower, especially, they're so ingrained in my brain and all that. The moment I fire that game up every time, the music immediately just takes me back to my childhood in a way that very few things can. And Outrun, I just love that game. But anyways, the arcade version came out in this year, and also Fantasy Zone 2 came out. I believe in the arcades, but I don't quite know if they came out also on the Sega Master System at the same time. But basically, the Sega Master System. So it came out here in the United States. It was known as a Sega Mark III in Japan. But so Sega Master System, so sort of like Sega's answer to Nintendo, and so they were trying to compete against it. And so, long story short, it ultimately didn't. I mean, it wasn't able to. It barely made any kind of a dent in the market here in the United States. But it did okay in Japan, from my understanding. But it really did really well in the UK, in Europe, and in later on in Brazil, which is great. I mean, I'm happy to know that in other parts of the world, the Sega Master System was like the system for people instead of Nintendo. I find that fascinating, right? And so honestly, I mean, I think a big reason for that would have been because Nintendo didn't have a presence, or as large of a presence, in those territories there. Because I think in Europe, I don't think that they got the Famicom until a little, or the Nintendo Entertainment System until later. And I want to say in Brazil, I don't think that they got it until much later. So basically the Sega Master System was what they had during this time for an 8-bit console system. Is my understanding of it. I could be wrong on some of those details there, but that's kind of what I get. So, I mean, if that's all you have, well, that's what you're going to gravitate towards and, have the nostalgia for and all. Had Nintendo come out in those territories, right, at the same time, I'm pretty sure Nintendo would have dominated, but that it didn't, and that people hold this very high nostalgia for the system in those territories, I find it truly fascinating because they have the same nostalgia for it that I did, right, and all, which is not the common thing here in the States. Nintendo was the one that people remember, right? People remember Super Mario Brothers, Zelda, Metroid, and all those, which are excellent games, right? I those games are amazing. But for me, this is where my nostalgia really started kicking in as far as what I grew up with and all, because we got the Sega Master System. I don't know if it was in 1986. I think we got the Odyssey 2 first. Sometime later is when we got the Sega Master System, and I believe the reason we got it was because my brother was starting to become a fan of games like Outrun and Hang On in the arcades, and so the place to play those at home was on the Sega Master System. So somehow I think he convinced my dad of that, and then my dad eventually, once he got his hands on on Outrun, he loved that game. And so I remember my dad playing that game with us. And so those are some of the fondest memories I have as a child, is just getting to play Outrun with my brother and my dad. And we would just have a blast on it, right? We would pass the controller back and forth, see who could get the best time, just being in our room there and all. And definitely some of really the only memories that I have as a child where my dad would be with us, right? And all, and like playing with us, right? Like, partaking in some kind of activity with us. And don't get me wrong, I don't say that as a bad thing to my dad. My family, my mom and my dad were very hard workers. They were always working. And so we never really spent a whole lot of time, as far as what I can recall, like as a family, right? And not just because they were always working. I mean, they definitely took us on vacation trips and all that, right? And also, like I said, right, my parents were hardworking families. God bless them. They did the best that they could for us. But I just don't have a whole lot of memories of, like, let's say, for example, like playing catch with my dad or things like that, right? But I do remember this though a lot, that he would play Outrun with us. And so he bought a specific controller for it, because so the Sega Master System came with these two control pads that weren't the best. They were kind of in the shape of like the Nintendo Entertainment System ones, where it's like a rectangle with buttons on it. The cable though came out from the side as opposed to the top, which made it a little weird. And the buttons, it didn't have like a start and select, because it only had like the directional pad and then the buttons 1 and 2. And then one of them acted like as a start button. and the buttons were a bit mushy if I recall right, and then the D-pad was kind of mushy too also, and so it wasn't quite as good. And from what I recall, when we got the system, the buttons, like, they broke fairly quickly. Now that could have been that, they were just cheaply made, or me and my brother, we were fairly young, right? We're just probably, you know, bashing on them like little young idiots that we were. So eventually my dad got this control stick, which was specifically made for games like Outrun and I believe Afterburner and all, where the stick was on the right side and then the buttons were on the left side, which is, kind of the opposite of the normal configuration, right? Of a control pad of some sort of control stick. But it was mainly meant for like games like Outrun and all. But eventually, because the control pads busted up, that's the control stick is what we used on pretty much everything else. And I remember even that control stick got a little bit banged up too, because I remember the cable that connected to the control stick, that all got kind of ripped up, and also we held it together with like a black electrical tape, with all the wiring was starting to show and all. And again, I don't know if they were just cheaply made or me and my brother were just bashing the shit out of it and I'll just bang them up pretty bad. But yeah, I do remember that control stick we would play with, like, not only Outrun but like platformers and all other games that we had on there. But yeah, just a little memory there of that. But yeah, the Sega Master System, it's a great system on paper, right? Where it's more powerful than the Nintendo. The graphics are just a lot more colorful and all. Uh, the sound chip, I mean, I think I've read somewhere that the Nintendo Entertainment System is technically better, but I just have more nostalgia though for the Sega Master System. They each have a unique sound to them and all. And now that's excluding, or the FM sound chip, right? That the Sega Master System eventually would get in Japan and maybe Europe. I don't know, but that didn't come out here in the United States, so you would have to like modify the system, to my understanding, if you wanted that, which would give it more improved sound. Um, but yeah, it didn't have it here in the United States. But the Sega Master System, I mean, it's an excellent looking system where it's all black and has a bit of like red where the pause and the start button are at. So that's one thing about the system. You have to actually get up there and push the one of the pause button on the system itself, or the reset button, I believe, to, if you want to pause it or reset it. Bit of a nuisance, but I mean, just is what it is. But yeah, we got the version though that came with the light phaser gun and Hang On and Safari Hunt. So Hang On, Safari Hunt was our Super Mario Brothers and Duck Hunt. And Hang On, I mean, it's a fun conversion of the arcade game. Obviously not as good looking and all, but it's still fun. And Safari Hunt, I love that game. I mean, I'd have to replay both of them, but I preferred it over Duck Hunt back in the day. I just thought that has like 3 different stages, and I just thought they were just funner, right, and all, than the Duck Hunt one. But yeah, so again, everyone had Duck Hunt. Everyone complained about the dog in that game. We had Safari Hunt, and it was that was our shooting game, I guess. But yeah, and then the cool thing about the Sega Master System also was that if you press a combination of buttons, it would give you a secret game. It was called like Snail Maze. And it's just a simple little game where you're a snail trying to get through a maze and all. But I do remember having fun playing that. I wonder if I can emulate that game somehow. But yeah, Sega Master System, it's, the other thing about it too that's pretty memorable about the system, not for the best ways, but it was the box art. The original, the early Sega Master System games, it was basically it was a white box with like black grid lines, and then usually at the bottom left of the box, it would have like just a very simple image. Like probably the more infamous one is a pro wrestling one where I don't even know what's going on. It's like a wrestler's body that doesn't have a head, and it looks like has someone in a chokehold, but it's his own head. It's very odd. If you've never seen it, just Google it. And you'll be like, what is going on with this box art? Or like Black Belt, which is one of my more favorite games on the Master System. It just has like the bottom part of a leg. It looks like it's kicking something. It just has sort of like the pow sort of, like in the like the old school movies and all, where you punch someone, it says pow, and it has like this almost like an explosion looking thing and all. It has that effect on there, and that's all it is. Outrun just has like this kind of like a little chibi mini kind of cartoonish version of a Testarossa with a palm tree, and and that's it. But and then the font on it was just a very basic, like just font of whatever the game's name was, like Black Belt, Alex Kidd in Miracle World or whatever. But I think Outrun actually had like the font of the arcade, right, where it said Outrun instead of just a basic font. Um, as the years went on and the later games, they would have more detailed cover arts, but the very initial batch of Sega Master System games and all were pretty basic. But yeah, great system. Like I said, I have a lot of love for this system. At the end of the day, as I've looked back on it and all, I do prefer the Nintendo Entertainment System over the Sega Master System. But the Sega Master System is a great system if you want to explore the library of this, specifically if you're also adding the European and the Brazil games, because that really expands the library on them. Because they got a lot of excellent games that we didn't get here in North America. So if you are going to explore the Sega Master System library of games, make sure you check out the games from those territories, because they have like really excellent Disney games, and just some other stuff too. Also, right, that didn't come out here. Like there was even a Ninja Gaiden game that came out on the Sega Master System, which I didn't know about that until. Well, I guess I've known about it now for a few years, but it's been somewhat recently that I found that out. So, but yeah, Sega Master System, just a great system there. But we had a lot of other great stuff too, also that came out during this year. And let's see, like we had things like Arknoid, which I remember I loved playing this game in the arcade because it had like the control was like this knob that you would rotate, and I remember it feeling like really sturdy, like, and when you turn it, it just had like good feedback to it and all, right, that made the game fun to play. But basically, Arknoid is like an updated Breakout where you have a sort of like a, I don't know, like a little rectangular bar thing at the bottom, and you're moving it left to right, and you're bouncing this ball back and forth, right, to break these blocks up on top. But it's really fun though, as simple as the concept as it is, but it's really fun. There was Jakal by Konami, and so this game it's kind of like a top-down run and gun, I guess, but you're in a Jeep. I remember playing a little bit on the Nintendo, and it's fun. I'd have to go back and explore that game. So actually, you know what? Now that I'm thinking about it, let's do this here real quick. I'm just gonna add it to my games here, so maybe it'll get selected in my Relay of Gaming little thing that I got going on here. Call. Okay. Let's put it in here. Sweet. Okay, let's see here. All right, sorry for that little pause. So as I'm talking about, here and all that, right? A part of this also, what I like to do is just sort of uh it in subtle ways, and I'll kind of include just overall family stuff and this in here and all. Obviously, I don't want to give a whole lot of details and all, just for our privacy, but but just kind of give you a glimpse, right, and all what like family life is like and all that when you're married, have kids and everything. But I just paused for a little bit here as I saw my wife sent me an email about some accolades that she got at work, and so it looks like she's kicking ass there. So very proud of her. Very cool. Good job, babe. But let's see. So Jakal, right? So okay, so I got that added to my list. And so something that I came across here, and I'd almost forgotten about this, but I do remember seeing these in the arcade. And so it was called Play Choice 10. So it was like an arcade cabinet that would have 10 Nintendo Entertainment System games in there. And so when you put in a quarter, it would buy you some time to play, like, I guess, like random games that it would select for you. And so it's kind of like a way for you to test out, excuse me, what Nintendo Entertainment System games would get. So it's almost like an advertisement for you to try to eventually, buy the Nintendo Entertainment System. Like, hey, look, these are the games that you can play on the system if you buy it. And yeah, it seems like a pretty cool concept at the time. And they would like rotate the games, I guess, in there. And yeah, I do remember seeing arcade cabinets like that. Um, and I want to say, so I'm going to go on a little side story here. This would have been maybe let's see. So it actually would have been probably next year or so, because so the first time I went to Mexico was, I think it was in it would have been 1987, 1988 or so, give or take. And what I remember about one of the things that I remember about that early trip, though, is that they would have a little arcade there that was close to my grandpa's house, and they would have games like, I remember that's where I first played in the arcade Ghouls and Ghosts and Castlevania. And I want to say, I think that's where I saw a Play Choice 10 arcade cabinet system as well, too. one of the interesting things that I remember about that trip too, also, well, when playing at the arcades down there, is that so here in the United States we would use quarters, right? To play. Over there, what I recall was so you would go into the arcade, and then there was somebody in the back, right, that you would exchange like your pesos for, like the dollar bills for like these coins, but the coins were it wasn't like their coin pesos that they have down there. It was like these coins that had like these ridges on them, and so that's what you would put into the arcade machine. So you gave them so much, so much pesos, and then they would give you back so many coins, right, depending on how much you gave. And so I remember inserting those weird kind of ridge shaped coins, or coins that had these ridges on them to play the arcade machines. And I'm pretty sure that's where I saw one of these Play Choice 10 arcade cabinets down there. I don't know if I saw them up here in the United States, at least the limited arcades that we had in our area. But yeah, just that just brought back a memory, core memory. Um, but yeah, let's see. And another thing about Nintendo too, also. So I mean, this I mean, it didn't quite make my personal game of the year, but I'm sure it was probably for a lot of people is The Legend of Zelda. And I mean, this game really revolutionized gaming in a lot of different ways. And I mean, one of the things that it started introducing, that it was one of, if not the first game that had like a save feature where it had like a battery backup on it. And that was big, right? Because, here we are now, we're making long games now, where you get to explore and all that. And so, they had to come up with a save file because, it's pretty hard to try to beat this game all in one setting. And so that was pretty revolutionary at the time that they included that. And so, which was cool, right? Because this is where, again, we started expanding out on more, more adventurous, complex games and all that. And I mean, The Legend of Zelda just became so legendary. Shigeru Miyamoto, he already had a hit with Super Mario Brothers. And now here we go with The Legend of Zelda. And just truly made, Nintendo's two most iconic games out there. Yeah, I mean, there's so much to say about this game, and it really, I can imagine. I've talked about before, right? I know where a friend of mine's brother had this game, and we could only play it when he was gone. So my friend would kind of sneak in the game to play it, but I would have just loved playing that game as a kid, and just to have gone lost in Hyrule at the time. I've played it since as an adult, and I've beaten it and all that, and it's fun, it's cool. I just really feel like that the real true magic of that game would have been, had I played it when I was younger at the time. But still a revolutionary game, and I mean, laid the groundwork right for what would become one of the best gaming series of all time. But yeah, just a great game. And then also Metroid, I'm pretty sure came out this year. And did it come out this year? I'm pretty sure it did. Let's see. Metroid, yep, 1986. So yeah, Metroid 2. So what was cool about Metroid is that so it took it's in a weird way, it's kind of a combination of Super Mario Brothers and The Legend of Zelda. In Super Mario Brothers, that it's a side-scrolling game, but then The Legend of Zelda, where it has the exploration element of it, and only now it puts it into sort of a space kind of, space. What am I trying to say? Like a space exploration, I guess, sort of setting to it. And Metroid, it's a bit rough. It's a classic for sure, and it laid the groundwork for one of my favorite genres of all time, which being what ended up being known as Metroidvanias. But the original one is a bit rough. But back then, I'm sure it would have been really cool to explore and all. And I remember it being a popular game. But again, it was just one of those games I never got to play back then. But I do recall, though, that the little bit that I did play of it, it really inspired me a lot to where I remember in class, like in elementary school and all, I would, have a notebook and I would like draw out level design, like a level based, with inspiration of something like Metroid. Like, okay, this path connects here, this path connects here. And I would draw it all out, and I would have like these elevators and all where you would get to a certain part of this, different stage. And it, video games just really, really expanded my imagination at the time. And I just used to have a lot of fun doing stuff like that. But yeah, Metroid. I mean, it was a pretty popular game. It was really difficult, and it hasn't aged quite the best. But another thing that it was really notable because again of its very sort of isolated, kind of creepy Nintendo game, and the emphasis on exploration, which again was starting to show that video games are can be more than just chasing a high score or just getting to the end of the level, which was cool, right? And the other thing that was really noted for was that it was not the first game, I'm sure, but one of the first games that introduced a female protagonist. And we didn't know it at first because they really hid this, right? It's not until the end, and I think you have to get a good ending where she takes off her helmet and it's like revealed that it's a girl or something like that, or no, I think she takes off her body armor, right? And I was like, oh, you've been playing a girl the whole time, because even in the instruction manual, I think that they refer to your character as a him, right? Like as a guy. But yeah, it was later revealed. And I don't think there was, from what I understand, I don't think it was like planned all along or anything. I think it was more of a spur of the moment thing where I read something where one of the developers said something like, hey, wouldn't it be crazy like if, she just, that Samus ended up being a girl? Oh yeah, that'd be kind of crazy. Put it in. And I think it was as simple as that, right? But little did they know maybe back then that Samus Aran would become one of the coolest protagonists in video game history, right? So, but it all started here and just at a very, simple little concept there. But then also we had Dragon Quest that came out this year, which was highly influential with the JRPG genre going forward. And the game is really rough when you try to go back to it if you're trying to play the original version, but it definitely laid the groundwork right for what was to come later, and just the Dragon Quest series, and then just RPGs as a whole. But it was Yuji Horii, Akira for the like the main, I guess, I don't know, game designer or producer. I'm not sure exactly what his role is, but he's been pretty much synonymous with the Dragon Quest series since then. Akira Toriyama for the monster designs and the character artwork and all. So he was already getting some fame with Dragon Ball Z. And Koichi, I believe, I have his name wrong, I'm sure, but the composer. So that trio there, right, continued to be a big part in the Dragon Quest series going forward. Sadly, the Akira Toriyama has passed, and I believe also the composer. I'm sorry if I got that wrong there, but I want to say I think that both of them has passed, and so their contributions to this to the series, well, I'm sure will be greatly missed. I'm someone that has fairly more recently been really getting into the Dragon Quest games. I played part 8 when it came out in 2005, but slowly been playing through some of the other ones, and so I'm really starting to see what the whole appeal of the series has been. Currently, I'm playing through the Dragon Quest 3 2D HD remake, and really excited about 1 and 2 that are coming out here soon, and then the recently announced part 7 also that is getting like a remake too, also, which looks excellent, and so that just makes me really excited, right? And all that if they're going to do Dragon Quest 5, which little bit that I played of that, I feel like it could be one of my favorites in the series. And then also, I'm almost foaming at the mouth if they end up doing Dragon Quest 8, some kind of like a remake of that one and all. That'd be super exciting. And the way that they're going, it almost seems like that's what they're leaning towards, right? So, because we got 1, 2, and 3 now that are being remade, 7 that's been announced, and it's already coming out here soon in February of next year. So, yeah, that's very exciting for the future on that. And I think it was Yuji Horii that had a recent interview of some sort that he kind of pretty much alluded to that yeah, they're all getting a remaster of some sort or remake. But yeah, let's see, another classic game too, also again one of my favorite series of all time, Castlevania. I absolutely love Castlevania. It's the series as a whole, definitely one of my more favorite gaming series, and the first one started here. And like I said, I don't quite recall if I played the one on the Nintendo first at a friend's house, or if it was the arcade cabinet in Mexico that I played first. But when I first started playing this game, I just loved it right away. The whole gothic theme of it and all is excellent. And it's a very hard game and all, but a very fun game. And this is where it started for me. And on the Nintendo Entertainment System, or the arcade version of it, right? And all is where I first played it. But I don't quite recall if it was the arcade version that came out first or not. I'm not sure on that, but yeah, Castlevania. I mean, they're just a great 2D. It started as a 2D kind of action game where your main character, he's part of the Belmont family, and the original protagonist of it was Simon Belmont, and yeah, just a fun action game. And if you like Halloween stuff, like spooky monsters like Dracula, yeah, Frankenstein, things like that, and all, you'll love this game and all. But it's a very popular series, so I'm sure you've at least heard of it to some extent. And it led down the road right to some of my favorite games of all time. But it started off as an action series of games. But there was also like Kid Icarus. That was another popular Nintendo game. It's a hard game. I've gone a little ways into it, and it's kind of hard, but kind of like uh, it was at one point one of the more popular Nintendo games. Sort of like for some reason I can kind of find it somewhat comparable to Metroid as far as like it's an adventure game and all that you're exploring an area and all. But basically you keep moving up in the game, and as you're trying to get to, I guess, your destination. It has kind of like a Greek sort of mythology about the game and all. And a little bit that I played of it and all. I mean, it's fun, it's hard and all, but I don't have too much more memories of this game here though and all, other from what I played of it somewhat recently. But it was a popular game back then. But then jumping over back to Sega, so there was Alex Kidd in Miracle World, which was between him and Opa Opa from Fantasy Zone. They were, I guess, sort of, you can say, like Sega's mascots at the time, and specifically Alex Kidd, which I'm assuming they probably made this character to compete against Mario. And Alex Kidd is cool, he's his design, I guess, he's very Japanese like, and also I think it appeals more to the Japanese audience. But I mean, he's cute, he's a lovable character enough, but I just don't think that he had enough appeal and all to say like compete against Mario, not only in his look and his overall world and everything, but also just the game itself. Alex Kidd, it's basically a platformer where your main way of attacking is punching your enemies instead of like jumping on them, because if you jump on them you're gonna die. But it's I mean, it's fun. The platforming on it is it's not quite as tight as Mario, and that's what really separates the two for me, because in Alex Kidd the platforming is very floaty, and so kind of makes it hard it feels almost like you're gliding a lot in the game, and so it's not as precise as like Mario Brothers, and so that's why I just can't put it as like a in the higher echelon of old school platforming games from back in the day. But it does have a lot of charm, though, like I said, right? And all, he is a cool character, and it's a very unique world. Like, for example, you play what is it called? Junkin, I think, where it's basically paper, rock, scissors to defeat the bosses in this game. So it's quirky, it's fun, but yeah, it's just not as polished as say something like the Mario Brothers games for me to say like this is Sega's answer to Mario Brothers, right? And all, because it's just not quite as good. But we did get Wonder Boy also, I believe, first in the arcades, and which would eventually come out to the Sega Master System. And Wonder Boy, and also another game, Adventure Island, which is more popular on the Nintendo. They were very similar at first, where you're like in an island and you're, throwing hammers and all. So those two games were very similar. So I don't know how much like inspiration they took from one another. But then eventually the Adventure Island games kind of stuck to its formula. It was like in a side scroller, you're on an island and all that. Where the Wonder Boy games kind of went in a different direction afterwards. But yeah, both of them got their start this year here. Let's see. But yeah, I mean, we got games also like Solomon's Key, RBI Baseball, which I do recall that being a really popular baseball game. Rolling Thunder, which was a fun arcade game there, where you play sort of like a secret spy of some sort. And Rampage as well too. That came out this year as well. So Rampage, I mean, it was pretty popular, where you play these three huge like monsters, where there's oh god, what was their name? Ralph, who was the wolf, right? George, who was the ape, like the kind of like King Kong ape, and then God, I'm gonna get the name wrong, so I'm not even gonna bother. But and then also like a lizard, right? So I guess you can say kind of like the dinosaur Godzilla kind of character. And the point of the game is that you're scaling these buildings, you're climbing up on them to bash them, to bring them down, and you have like this whole little wave of army men and all trying to shoot at you and all. And so the goal of the game and all is that you tear down as many buildings as you can. And simple concept, but it's pretty fun though. And I mean, eventually it ended up getting a movie with The Rock, which came out, what, 4 years ago or so, something like that. So apparently the game's had some appeal and all that, right? And all that it still has gone on, right? To that it had a Hollywood movie made of it. I don't know how good the movie is, but I wouldn't think it's particularly good. But still, the fact that they got a movie, right, kind of shows the appeal of the game. Um, but yeah, it really popular in the arcades. There was some home conversions of it that were made, which, to what I understand, there was a Nintendo version, obviously, which was a decent enough port, and then there was a version on. It was either on the Atari 5200 or the 70. What was it? The 7800. Um, Both of them were decent, but the one that really stood out, though, and it came out later. I don't think it didn't come out in 1986 for the home version, at least for the one that's considered the best, and that was on the Sega Master System version. That one had what's considered probably the best version of Rampage. So good job, Sega. But yeah, let's see what else could happen in this year. Here, 1986, there was Rygar, the arcade, came out during this year. The arcade version, I don't know too much about it. I mean, it's definitely has the staples of the series, right? Where you have like this disco or disc, what is it called? It's like this kind of like a yo-yo weapon that you use, but well, it's not actually a yo-yo. That doesn't sound too threatening, right? But it's like a disc armor thing that you kind of use like a yo-yo where it goes back and forth and all, and it's kind of like a spiked sort of like shield looking thing. The Again, I don't know much about the arcade other than that it was like an action game, platforming game of some sort. I don't know if the Nintendo version came out this year, but I know the arcade one did come out. But eventually on the Nintendo, it was a fairly popular game. It was, again, an action kind of adventure sort of game on the Nintendo Entertainment System. I just know it was kind of popular. It was made by Tecmo. I just remember it a lot for the sunset that there's in the background of the Nintendo version and all. But yeah, it's got its release during this year here. There was some kind of a game called Starflight, which was mainly on the PC, but from what I understand of it and all, it was pretty revolutionary, where it gave you like choices where you can, so kind of started seeing games like this where it was almost like a choose your own adventure kind of style of game. There'd already been things like that done before in the past, like with a lot of those text adventure games, like Zork's Adventure or something like that it's called, or the Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, like games like that. But this game looks like has some actual like graphic slides on it and all, and you select certain options. And also the little bit video that I saw on it, it kind of looked like maybe like a very early version of a game style of like Mass Effect, just not like in an action shooter RPG, but more like in a graphic adventure of some sort. But yeah, I never heard about it, and also I thought it was kind of interesting when I was doing some research for this episode here. But then Capcom. So again, Capcom and Konami were coming out with some real bangers during this time, and games that eventually would get a lot of popularity on the Nintendo. But for like example for Capcom, so they had a game called Legendary Wings, which was like a vertical shooter, and then eventually turned into like a side scroller as you go into different parts of as you progress further in the game. And I remember playing this game a lot on the Nintendo version at home. Oh, well, not at home. At my friend's house. So my friend that I've talked about, that he had kind of a downstairs area where they had a decent sized TV, at least for the time. And this is one game that I really remember playing down there because I thought that the graphics looked really excellent on that TV. There was like a section where it has like these, kind of looks like these stone faces and all, and then you kind of go into them because it's kind of like a cave, and then it turns like into a side scroller and all. I just remember playing that game a lot and having a lot of fun with it, even though I haven't played it probably since back then. So I might try to give that game a shot at some point to relive some memories. But yeah, I remember it was a more popular shooter from Capcom back in the day. But then Konami had some pretty impressive stuff also, right? So I already talked about Castlevania, but they had this Double Dribble game. And so Konami started doing some sports games too also. And so this is one of their more popular ones back then. And the arcade version anyways was pretty impressive with the graphics that I had at the time, where, like the player sprites and all that looked pretty impressive for then. And the cool thing about it was too also that if you're doing like a slam dunk, it kind of gave you like a little cutscene and showed like a really detailed imagery, right? At least at the time, of your player doing a slam dunk on it. And yeah, it was a fun sort of arcadey kind of sports game and all, but was pretty impressive at the time that it mimicked the sport of or the game of basketball fairly accurately, right? As far as its rules and and all that, you actually felt like you were playing a basketball game where a lot of the earlier games were very, very basic. So yeah, so kudos to them for that. And also from what I saw was that it was the first game to have the USA national anthem in it too. So that's pretty impressive. And this game also got a lot of popularity, as a lot of games did back then, on the Nintendo Entertainment System. So games would come out in the arcade, they would get ported over to the Nintendo, and even grew more popularity there in a lot of cases. And Konami also had Life Force, which was sort of a spin-off to Gradius. So it was a side-scrolling shooter. And this game, I remember I always wanted to play it as a kid just because I like the concept of it. And I like the box art where it has like this weird sort of alien serpent looking thing and all. And it says Life Force and your spaceship kind of there in the front. And I just always thought it looked cool. And it seemed like, the graphics where it looks like you go inside the alien because it had like very organic looking levels. Like you're fighting this brain. And then like there's this area where like what looks like these teeth are coming up and down and all. And so I just thought that the concept of the game looked really cool, but I don't think I ever really played it back then. And I haven't really played it even now. So that's another game too also that I want to fire up at some point, just so that I can play a game that I really wanted to play back in the day. But yeah, so a lot of great stuff this year. 1986 is a great year for video games. Now that I'm really kind of going through everything here, this was an excellent year for video games because, again, the Nintendo Entertainment System was starting to fire on all cylinders. We had the Sega Master System, which I know wasn't too popular, but it brings, for me personally, a lot of great memories. And yeah, I mean, this is an excellent, excellent year. And let me confirm something really quick now that I'm sort of thinking about it. Was this a year that I did have as my favorite of all time? Pretty sure I did. I don't recall. I thought I had my notes saved on that somewhere here. Apparently not. Good job, me. But yeah, I'm pretty sure it was 1986 that I had picked for one of my top 10 favorite gaming years of all time. If not, it's definitely up there. And if I didn't put it on my top 10 list, then I'm an idiot for that. But either way, a lot of a very pivotal year in gaming, as gaming now kind of started taking shape for what it would become for many years to follow. And again, a lot of that was led by Nintendo, but again, don't count Sega out, right? And all, again, they were having a lot of influences, again, maybe not so much in the home market, but just in the arcades and all, and also where they were starting to come up with a lot of franchises where, again, they weren't quite as well known as the Nintendo ones, but they were definitely well known enough, right? And all that they started appealing to a pretty big crowd. And so this is sort of where the roots of like the console wars eventually will start taking shape. So that'll be fun to talk about that in the next, some years down the road on that. But that's what I got on that for now. See, for today, gonna go to the store, get some food to start cooking, some carne asada, so that'll be good to eat. And other than that, just clean up a bit and chill out here with my girls. And yeah, it looks like it's gonna be a somewhat nice of a day, so that'll be nice. I hope you have an excellent week. Take care of yourselves, and we will see you all in the next one. Till then, have a good one.